What's up, traders? Matt from the Trade Brigade here with your weekend crypto report, where as always, I do a technical analysis and give you my thoughts on the coins listed up above. There have been no major changes to our watch list, and to be quite frank with you, I'm not entirely sure why you're watching this video. Crypto's been extremely boring over the past week and a half or so. Our levels haven't really changed, although some of our coins are getting closer to breakdown points in descending triangles. We'll cover those as the video goes on, but for the most part, very quiet marketplace out there right now in the crypto world. So kicking things off though on the Bitcoin daily time frame, just to talk about what we always talk about. What do we have in store? Still in the midpoint of the range, and right, your edge does not exist here. Your edge exists literally at the edges for a breakout or mean reversion type trade, and the same is true but opposite down here at the bottom for either mean reversion or a breakdown. When you're in the midpoint, it's very likely that you just chop around back and forth and you don't really have a statistical edge. It's probably 50-50 whether or not it's higher or lower. Maybe you have a little bit of edge based on the daily trend that preceded this, and obviously Bitcoin's been in a downtrend, so we would lean a little bit more on the short side. It's just not clear, right? So as of now, and we can prove this, right? It went a little bit lower, it went a little bit higher, and now it's back to being a little bit lower. Very choppy here at the midpoint of the range. So all in all, I would be patient in Bitcoin still until we can crack 45,800 to the upside, or to the downside, we get a breakdown of $34,350 per coin. If you're a scalper, I'm not saying that there aren't ranges to trade in here. That's fine if you're looking at like a 5 or 15 minute chart. That's absolutely fine and acceptable. I'm not saying don't do that. But from the longer term trend perspective on Bitcoin, nothing's going to happen until we crack the highs or crack the lows. If you want an advanced heads up, then maybe there's a move up and over 42K to get us to the top of the range, or maybe there's a move underneath, roughly, what's this number here? We've got, let's call it 38K for round number's sake. Underneath that could take us to the bottom end of the range. So maybe you set some alerts here as your advanced heads up warning, but for now, still right in the midpoint of the range, not a whole lot to do inside of Bitcoin. Let's continue along and talk about Ethereum. This one's getting closer to a breakdown point, right? You can clearly see that we have lower highs coming into this set of equal lows, roughly 25.65 here. If that breaks, you're just looking for the move into the pivot low here from the 24th of January. That's roughly 2310, 2300. That is your target to the downside. Anything after that, we know it gets fairly nasty into this area here, roughly 1773, 1774, right? So Ethereum, it's not looking fantastic. And if this descending triangle starts to break, maybe it's enough juice to get Bitcoin to the bottom end of the range, crack the bottom end of the range, and then we see Bitcoin at 30K again. Just speculation. I don't know for sure, but this pattern that's unfolding here certainly is more bearish than bullish. If there's going to be a turnaround, right? If there's going to be a turnaround, what are we watching out for? It's not really this resistance trend line anymore. You can see it's not too accurate, but if we come in with this one, that's much better. So if we get a bounce off of this, maybe target the resistance trend line and then lean on longs to the top of the range if that can break. That's the only long scenario that I'm seeing in many of these charts that are presenting descending triangles. So Ethereum, break of, let's just round off here, let's call it 2,900 if it's over the course of this weekend, can take us to the highs here, the top of this balance at 3162, 3200 roughly, if you want to count that true high and split the difference between some of this chop over here. That's Ethereum in a nutshell. Continuing along, talking about Binance Coin, stuck completely in a sideways range, more like Bitcoin. However, it's at the bottom, right? You can see that there's kind of your midpoint. And it truly does depend on how you draw this. You could take into account these lower wicks and then technically call the range this right here. I don't know. This one's kind of, it could go either way, to be quite frank with you. You can see that there was strong support here, and here, and we're kind of getting closer to that. I would just, play the levels, to be quite frank with you. Subdivide the range, that's fine. There's a couple of ways you could look at it. So let's call this the overall range with a tighter range here, right? We're currently in the tight range. If that one breaks down, obviously your target is 335.30. If we play ping pong in here, expect sideways. And maybe if we take out the top, we move to the top of the overarching range at 434.20, right? And your breakout point there would be 393.60. As of right now, the candle structure would suggest that lower is kind of in store, right? You can clearly see that we have lower highs. We have a solid red-bodied candle, a little bit of indecision on today's activity. I'll certainly give credit where credit's due, but it's not like it's a big, hammer candle with a large lower wick with buyers clearly stepping up, closing at the highs. We don't have that yet. So I would be a little bit skeptical of calling this, a possible reversal pattern back up towards the highs, all right? So Binance Coin, just sideways, choppy. Again, crypto's been in a very boring state over the past week and a half or so. Cardano, this one's interesting simply because we're sitting right on a major flush point around 80 cents. So if I just, do this, you can clearly get the sense that we have lower highs continuing to form, equal lows, and we know that in Cardano, if we scrunch up the chart, there's a ways to fall underneath us. If 80 cents breaks, if we really start getting some more firm price action underneath there, notice that the next support from the daily is coming way down at 41 cents. And again, I don't want to insult anyone's intelligence, but if you're taking a long at 80 cents, looking for the rotation higher, and it happens to fall to 41 because that's our next technical support, that's a 50% loss. What do you need to recover from a 50% loss? You need a 100% gain, which is incredibly difficult. Well, maybe not so much in the crypto marketplace, but you get where I'm going with that, right? It just isn't, it doesn't seem wise to me right here to be looking for reversals until we can put in a stronger pattern that would suggest the trend is starting to change. So maybe it's a double bottom and then a break of the resistance trend line, right? Maybe it's, some sort of confirmation of a higher low. Then you're getting long on the break of that last high, right? It just doesn't seem wise to be looking for longs in Cardano as of right now. Those are the levels to watch out for. $1 to the upside is your critical breakout point, which could produce a higher high if we capture it, right? From here to potentially here, there's your higher high we would then want to see. Can we get ourselves a higher low? So if there's a reversal, that's maybe how it would unfold. But as of right now, things looking fairly bearish in Cardano. Solana up next. What's going on here? Nearly a mirror image. For supports underneath, we have the bottom end of this flag, then the prior breakout point from here. Those levels are 66.14 and then 52, we'll call it for round numbers sake. You can get the same idea that we have lower highs continuously being produced, big set of equal lows. That's nothing more than a descending triangle. Breakdowns here of this 83 level take us to that first one underneath, which was 66.14. So do lean on, the bear side here inside of Solana. The only long trade is if we can recapture the high, right? Just like we talked about. So if something like this happens, fine, stop goes here, break here, looking for the rotation into this prior swing high around 120. That's one potential setup, but again, nothing about the chart right now would suggest that any major reversal could be underway. It's been lower highs and fairly sideways over the past couple of days with a big red-bodied bar and a red bar currently forming on today's session. So that's Solana. Link up next, same idea. I know I sound like a broken record, and if you haven't tuned out already, then, get prepared for how many more? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. With the exception of Luna, everything else is going to look fairly similar to what we're seeing here. Again, there's your lower highs continuously forming, flat lows. If it breaks, 1050 is your first target coming from. Let's find that. Maybe that's fun and interesting to do for the video. What's that target? It's the support from here. What's the next one underneath? It's the support from here. So 1050 and then 880 are your downside targets for potential reversals to start unfolding in Link Coin. As of right now, the pattern is bearish. We're looking for lower. If there's a break of the resistance trend line, maybe that's interesting to get us here to the midpoint of the range, 1550. I would take off at least half the position if that does occur, and then I would monitor for continuation to the top of the balance here, which was actually the shoulder line. So there's shoulder 1, head, shoulder 2, shoulder line of that prior head and shoulders pattern, right? That's 1765 to the upside, the ultimate target if we get a break of the resistance trend line in the first place. Next up, Polkadot. What do we have going on in Polkadot? Surprise, surprise, descending triangle, right? So lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, flat and equal lows, looking for the flush. The target below is 1278. If we break here, this one, there's not even really enough range to be trading for. I guess $2 is okay. But to be quite frank with you, I would want to see this turn into a double bottom, recapture the neckline at 1975, and then the rotation is here to 2335 for the more attractive trade, right? That to me makes a little bit more sense than taking the break of the resistance trend line, which once again is at the midpoint of a range, right? We're kind of right at that midpoint. Doesn't seem like, to me, it just doesn't strike me as the best trade idea. I would be more patient and wait for the higher high to occur, something there for the double bottom to trigger, long entry here, or if we break and then retest for a higher low, that's your secondary entry in Polkadot, all right? So that's what we've got in this one. Let's continue along. Crypto.com coin going sideways, stuck in a range. You can clearly see lows, highs, lows, bounce to the midpoint, so lower high from here to here, also from here to there, correct? So descending triangle is in force. There's your flat lows. If it breaks, look for the swing low here, and we do know that anything underneath that brings us to the all-time low ICO, initial coin offering price, at 25 cents a quarter. So the price action does not look phenomenal here. The only thing that it kind of has going for it is if it turns around, then maybe we get a longer term something that looks like this, right? So that's the only thing it has going for it right now, is the fact that it's potentially at a support trend line coming from ICO to the swing low here, we're kind of sitting on it, right? So there's the pattern is definitely bearish. Don't get me wrong about that. That's bearish, but the only bullish thing, if there's going to be a reversal that bounces it here, maybe it's the fact that we're getting into the support trend line. We see a rotation to the top. That's 44 cents, all right? But as of right now, I would just lean on the bearish pattern and say, I'm really going to be skeptical of longs, just like we saw in Polkadot. If this turns into a double bottom, fine. We can be long on the break of the neckline at the 44 cent mark to get into 51, all right? So that's what I would wait for instead of crypto.com coin. Matic up next, descending triangle. Again, surprise, surprise. Let me know in the comments if you're sick of this by now. But here we go. Lower highs, flat and equal lows, bearish pattern, the break of 134, we'll call it, brings us into here. Maybe a little bit of an intermediate support there as well. Let's map that level out just so we're aware. That's going to be around 116 and then 101, a dollar even basically to the downside over the course of time if this descending triangle does pan out and the daily trend does continue. If it's going to be a reversal, again, sort of sound repetitive here, but if this double bottom pans out, it's a break of this neckline, which was also prior support right here. So I like that from a technical aspect. That's 163.70. If that breaks, just target the pivot high, the first lower high at 187, right? So that's the upside trade here inside of Matic. Now let's get on to the interesting one. The one interesting chart in all of our list for today is none other than Luna. And we talked about this in last week's video as well. We were monitoring this for a Fibonacci pullback. If you come from here to here, remember we were well above the 38.2 on that move, but if we come from here to here, we were saying anything that held the top of the flag or the bottom of the flag is good for reversals. We got that reversal, right? So fantastic move here inside of Luna. Right now, we're getting a little bit of a pullback, which is A-okay. It's expected after we've made such a substantial run. So what are the levels that we want to see hold? Technically speaking, I would really want to see this hold right here, simply because it would produce a higher low. We would not be coming all the way back down. Let's clean this up actually a little bit. So we'll do something like this now because that technically is the low. So I would want to see the low end of this failed flag and then resistance here and here start to hold as support for a higher low from here to here, correct? Otherwise, if we come back down and do this, then we potentially risk a lower high bounce and then an equal low that just sets up a head and shoulders pattern, right? Break of this neckline should take us back down here to the breakout point where it all stemmed from, 58 bucks. So as of right now, I do want to see the higher low produced somewhere around this level. Could be 86, could be 85. Anything that's above 77.36 checks out as a decent higher low. Nice little pullback here. Then we can look for continuation. Let's quickly take out the fibs just specifically on this move. If we do something like that, look at that, right? So the 61.8, which is generally our Fibonacci line in the sand, is almost aligned with that 86.85. So to me, if that holds for a turn, fantastic. Fantastic. So that's Luna in a nutshell. This is really the one to be watching. It's where the momentum is. It's where the volume is. It's the only one that's putting up a solid fight to the upside and not stuck in some sort of descending triangle. So that's what we've got here. Obviously, your first target is an equal high at 103. From there, what do we have? Blue sky territories. All right, so if we can break into blue sky territories, that's incredibly bullish, looking for just whole and half dollars intraday levels that do form to act as new targets. Next and lastly, we're going to end on a pretty poor note, mana, right? So it is our Decentraland token. It's sort of our look into the metaverse, if you will. So we'll continue to monitor it, but for as of right now, it's just the descending triangle, right? Flat lows, breakdown takes us here, 182, the pivot where this little run stemmed from, and after that, we know really thin structure. So that level kind of has to hold, otherwise things start to crumble quickly here inside of Decentraland. The bullish trade is really a break of the resistance trend line, or probably, at that point, I wouldn't even really want to take that to that. I would, again, just wait for this to turn into potentially a double bottom if it's going to in the first place, and we fail this descending triangle, recapture of that level. So the 283 level becomes more important to the upside for a retest of your equal highs here at 345. So sorry to end it on such a poor note. Wish we could have went out on Luna there, but we've got to go through the whole list. That's going to wrap up the video. Again, if you made it all the way to the end, let me know in the comments section by saying snoozefest crypto in the comments section. And if you say it with that exact wording, I'll know you've made it to the end. And who knows, I'll respond to your comment with something nice and say, hey, I appreciate you. Thanks for making it all the way. Thanks for taking the time to leave a comment, right? So that's going to wrap it up. If you enjoyed today's video or learned anything new, let me know in the comments section or by giving the video a thumbs up. Don't forget our main channel will be releasing the weekly watch list video on Sunday as scheduled. And with all of that being said, I wish you a green trading weekend.